In the second I lunged into the lift, thinking I'd outrun my ex, the doors revealed a bigger threat, the Mafia boss leaning against the rail like he'd been waiting for me. His silence felt louder than my heartbeat, his smirk sharper than a warning. Then he muttered something that made me realize I'd run straight into a different kind of danger. I'd been working this route for 6 months now, always during the evening shift, always efficient, always invisible. Room service runners weren't supposed to be noticed. We were meant to slip through these marble veins like ghosts, delivering what the guests needed and vanishing before they remembered our faces. Today, I'd been covering for Jenny on the executive floors, the ones where the carpets felt like clouds and the door handles probably cost more than my rent. I should have known better than to take this shift. The corridor seemed endless, ceilings so high the chandeliers looked like distant stars. Everything smelled expensive here, leather and bergamot and something crisp I couldn't name. My uniform felt wrong in this space, the cheap polyester suddenly obvious against all this wealth. My sneakers made soft sounds against the carpet runner, marking each step like a countdown. 34 steps to the service elevator. I could do 34 steps. Taylor. The voice punched through my concentration like a fist through glass. My whole body went rigid, parcels wobbling dangerously in my grip. Ice flooded my veins, sharp and immediate. I knew that voice. I knew the specific way he said my name. Possessive, entitled, like he still had rights to it. I didn't turn around. If I didn't look, maybe it wasn't real. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the universe would grant me this one mercy and let me keep walking. Taylor, don't you dare ignore me. Footsteps behind me. Dress shoes on carpet, quick and purposeful. My pulse roared in my ears. 20 steps to the elevator. Just 20 steps. I walked faster, packages shifting in my arms, one corner jabbing into my breastbone. The pain was good. The pain meant I was still moving. I said stop. His hand locked onto my shoulder, yanking me backward with enough force that I stumbled. The top parcel slipped, and I had to juggle the whole stack to keep them from crashing to the floor. When I finally steadied myself and turned, Marcus was right there. 6 months since I'd last seen him. 6 months of changing my number, avoiding our old haunts, taking different routes home from work. 6 months of finally sleeping through the night. He looked exactly the same. Honey brown hair styled with too much gel, that manufactured casual look that probably took him 45 minutes. Blue button-down with the sleeves rolled to show off his forearms like he was modeling for a cologne ad. Gray slacks with a crease sharp enough to cut. He'd always dressed like he was auditioning for a life he couldn't quite afford, funded by credit cards and his parents' pity. His cologne hit me. Citrus and cedar, the same scent that used to cling to my clothes, my sheets, my skin until I couldn't smell anything else. My stomach turned. I have deliveries to make, I said, forcing my voice steady even as my hands shook. Let me go. Let you go? His laugh was harsh, incredulous. Like you let me go? You blocked me, Taylor. Blocked my number, blocked me on everything, refused to answer your door. I had to hear from Jenna that you'd moved. Do you know how that made me look? There it was. The thing that always mattered most to Marcus. Not how I felt, not what I needed, but how things looked to other people. How he looked. I left you a note, I said quietly. I explained everything. A note. He spat the word like it disgusted him. 8 months together and you ended it with a fucking note? 8 months of him showing up at my workplace unannounced. 8 months of texts demanding to know where I was, who I was with, why I hadn't answered fast enough. 8 months of him slowly isolating me from friends, making me second-guess every decision, turning my own thoughts into weapons against me. The day I'd packed my 2 duffel bags and moved into that tiny studio above the laundromat, I'd cried for 6 hours straight. Not because I'd miss him, because I was finally free. I'm sorry you were hurt, I managed, aiming for calm despite my rabbiting heart. But we weren't good for each other. You know that. What I know is that you owe me a real conversation. His hand shot out, fingers circling my wrist. Not tight enough to hurt. Marcus was too smart to leave bruises, but firm enough to communicate control. Face to face, like adults. The parcels shifted dangerously. You're going to make me drop these. Then maybe you should have thought about your job before you humiliated me. The corridor tilted. My vision narrowed to his hand on my wrist, to the familiar sensation of being trapped in amber. This was the pattern. This was how it always started. His hurt feelings, his need for closure, his pain taking up all the oxygen in the room until there was none left for me. I'd sworn I'd never let anyone make me feel this small again. Let go. The words came out harder than I expected, sharp enough that a couple emerging from a nearby suite glanced our way. Marcus's expression flickered. His grip loosened fractionally but didn't release. Don't make a scene, Taylor. You hate scenes. His voice dropped into that reasonable tone he always used when backing me into corners. Just come down to the bar. 20 minutes. We'll talk. And then you can finish your shift. I don't want to talk. I don't care what you want. The mask slipped just for a second. You don't get to blow up my life and walk away without explaining yourself. The service elevator was right there. Right there. 15 feet, maybe 20. If I could just twist free, if I could reach those doors before he caught up again. Marcus, please. I hated the pleading note creeping into my voice. Hated that he could still reduce me to this. I'll lose this job if I'm late. Should have considered that before you ghosted me. His fingers tightened. My eyes darted past him, searching for help, for hotel security, for anyone who might see what was happening. The corridor felt too long now, too empty, all that golden light suddenly oppressive. The beautiful space had transformed into something else, a gilded cage with no way out. Marcus leaned closer, his cologne overwhelming. 20 minutes, Taylor. Then I'll let you go. That's reasonable, isn't it? We both knew it was a lie. 20 minutes would become an hour, then dinner, then him walking me home, then him pushing his way inside to just talk, then his hands on me, then his voice in my head telling me I was overreacting, being dramatic, making problems where there were none. I'd lived this loop. I knew how it ended. Fine, I heard myself whisper. Anything to make him let go. Anything to buy time to run. But Marcus smiled like he'd won, his grip finally loosening, and I knew he wasn't going to let me reach that elevator, so I made the choice. I yanked my wrist free, hard enough to make him stumble, packages clutched against my chest like armor, and I ran. Sneakers pounding carpet, breath tearing from my lungs, his shout behind me. Taylor, get back here. But I was already moving. Already counting steps, already reaching for salvation. The elevator bank appeared ahead. 2 sets of doors, brass and gleaming. The up button glowed like a beacon. My finger slammed into it. Please, please, please. I could hear Marcus behind me, his footsteps fast and angry, his voice rising. The elevator on the right dinged softly. The doors began to slide open. I lunged forward without looking, packages clutched tight, desperate for any escape, and crashed directly into someone solid, immovable, completely unexpected. The parcels flew from my arms. Strong hands caught me before I could fall, steadying me with effortless control. I gasped, trying to regain my balance, trying to apologize, trying to breathe. And then I looked up. The man standing in the elevator wasn't hotel security, wasn't a guest, wasn't anyone I could have prepared for. He was tall, well over 6 feet, dressed in a charcoal suit so perfectly tailored it might have been painted onto him. The fabric caught the light with a subtle sheen, expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled intensity. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes. Dark eyes that looked at me with the kind of focus that made the rest of the world disappear. Not kind eyes, not warm, but not cruel either. Calculating, assessing, seeing me in a way that made my skin prickle. I, I'm sorry. I stumbled backward, but his hands stayed on my upper arms, keeping me steady. Taylor! Marcus's voice. Close now, furious. The man in the elevator's gaze flicked past me to something over my shoulder. His expression didn't change, not a flinch, not a blink, but something shifted in his posture, something that turned the air cold. Marcus skidded to a stop 5 feet away. I felt it happen. Felt the exact moment Marcus registered who was standing in that elevator, felt the way his momentum faltered, his confidence cracking like ice under weight. Marcus started. The man in the elevator said nothing. He simply looked at Marcus, his expression perfectly neutral, perfectly empty, and it was somehow more threatening than any words could have been. Marcus took a step back, then another. The man's attention returned to me, and for a breathless moment we just stood there, his hands still on my arms, the elevator humming softly behind him. "Are you getting in?" His voice was quiet, controlled, with an edge that suggested he didn't ask questions twice. I should have run, should have grabbed my parcels and bolted, should have done anything except nod mutely and step into that elevator. But I did. I stepped inside. The doors began to close, and through the narrowing gap I saw Marcus still standing there, frozen, his face a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like fear. Then the doors sealed shut with a soft thunk, and it was just me and the stranger in the rising elevator. The silence pressed against my eardrums. "Thank you," I whispered, finally finding my voice. He released my arms, stepping back to give me space, but his eyes never left my face. "Who was that?" "My ex-boyfriend." "He didn't look like an ex." "He doesn't accept that yet." The man's jaw tightened fractionally. The elevator continued its smooth ascent, floor numbers climbing on the digital display above the doors. 12, 13, 14. "What's your name?" he asked. "Taylor." My heart was still racing, adrenaline making my hands shake. "Taylor, I work here. I'm room service. I need to pick up those parcels. They're being handled." I blinked. "How do you—" The elevator lurched, not violently, but enough to make me grab for the handrail. The lights flickered once, twice. The smooth ascent halted with a mechanical groan that seemed to echo in my chest. We stopped moving. The floor indicator froze at 18. "What?" I started. Then the lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. The darkness lasted exactly 43 seconds. I counted each one, my breath shallow and quick in the confined space, hyper-aware of the stranger's presence mere feet away. I could hear him breathing, slow, measured, completely calm, while my heart tried to jackhammer through my ribcage. Then the emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in dim amber, and the elevator gave a mechanical shudder before resuming its ascent. Neither of us spoke. The numbers climbed. 19, 20, 21. The elevator didn't stop. It kept rising past the floors I knew, past the executive suites, past what I thought was the top of the building. Finally, at 25, it chimed softly. The doors opened onto a private foyer I'd never seen before. Not a hallway, not a corridor with multiple doors. A foyer, all cool white marble and recessed lighting that made the space glow like the inside of a pearl. A single massive door stood opposite the elevator. Dark wood with brushed steel handles, abstract art on the walls, the kind that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. Everything minimal, everything perfect. everything cold. This way. His voice wasn't a request. I hesitated at the threshold, still gripping the elevator handrail. Every instinct screamed at me to press the lobby button and run. But where would I run to? Back down to Marcus? Back to my studio apartment, where Marcus now knew I worked in this building and could find me? The man stepped out, his movements fluid and unhurried, and glanced back when I didn't immediately follow. His expression wasn't impatient, just expectant, like my compliance was inevitable. Maybe it was. I stepped onto the marble, and the elevator doors whispered shut behind me, sealing my choice. He moved to the door, produced a keycard I hadn't seen him retrieve, and pushed it open. Then he stepped aside with a subtle gesture. After you. My legs carried me forward on autopilot, through the doorway and into... I'd never seen anything like it. The penthouse opened up in a sweep of floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the entire city skyline. Lights glittered like fallen stars across the darkness, stretching to the horizon in every direction. The space itself was enormous. Living area, flowing into dining area, flowing into a kitchen with marble countertops that gleamed like ice. More of that minimalist aesthetic. Sleek furniture in grays and blacks, chrome accents, nothing unnecessary or soft. It looked like a place designed for someone who didn't actually live anywhere. Sit. He moved past me toward the kitchen, shrugging off his suit jacket and draping it over a chair with the kind of casual precision that suggested everything he did was deliberate. I remained standing, rooted near the entrance. He noticed. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but not unkind either. I'm not going to hurt you. People who have to say that usually do. Fair point. He opened a cabinet, retrieved 2 glasses. But if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have stopped your ex-boyfriend. I wouldn't have brought you here. And I certainly wouldn't be offering you water. He filled both glasses from a built-in filtration system, then turned and looked at me with those dark, assessing eyes. Waiting. I moved on trembling legs to the nearest chair, a low-backed thing in charcoal gray that was somehow both severe and comfortable, and perched on its edge. My uniform felt ridiculous here, cheap polyester against all this money. He crossed the space with both glasses, set one on the coffee table in front of me, then settled into the chair opposite. Not close enough to trap me. Not far enough to suggest indifference. Close enough to watch. Your name is Taylor, he said. Not a question. Yes. Full name? Taylor. Isabella Taylor. I reached for the water with shaking hands, took a sip just to have something to do. But everyone calls me Taylor. And the man downstairs? His voice remained level, conversational, but something sharp glinted beneath the words. Marcus, you said. How long? How long what? How long has he been following you? My throat tightened. We broke up 6 months ago. He didn't take it well. That's not what I asked. I set the glass down before I dropped it. 2 months, maybe 3. At first it was just texts, then calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Then he started showing up, at the laundromat, the grocery store, my building. I thought if I ignored him, he'd get bored and move on. But he didn't. No. Silence stretched between us. He sipped his water, studying me over the rim like I was a puzzle he was deciding whether to solve. What did he want tonight? He finally asked. Closure. Or that's what he claimed. The words started spilling out faster, propelled by exhaustion and fear, and the surreal safety of this sterile space. He wanted me to go to the bar with him, just to talk. But it's never just talk. It's hours of him explaining why I'm wrong, why I overreacted, why I owe him another chance. And if I give him an inch, he takes everything. That's how it works with him. The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. You're afraid he'll find you again. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. What do you think he'll do? My hands clenched in my lap. This was the fear I hadn't spoken aloud to anyone, the nightmare scenarios that kept me awake at 3 a.m. I don't know. Show up at my apartment, get me fired, ruin my reputation, convince people I'm crazy or vindictive or… My voice cracked. Or maybe something worse. Maybe one day he stops trying to talk and just doesn't stop. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. He set his glass down with deliberate care, then leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. His gaze never wavered from my face. You don't know who I am, he said quietly. No. But you followed me here anyway. You seemed safer than going back down. Something that might have been amusement crossed his features. Safer is relative. Are you going to hurt me? No. The word was absolute, no hesitation. But I'm also not going to let you leave tonight. My pulse spiked. What? That man knows where you work. He's agitated, humiliated, and from what you've described, obsessive. If you go home tonight, he'll follow you. If you call the police, he'll charm them or play the wounded ex-boyfriend. If you run, he'll chase. He paused. So you stay here, tonight, safe. Tomorrow we discuss terms. Terms for what? For keeping you that way. I should have argued. Should have demanded explanations. Should have done anything except sit there feeling the weight of his words settle over me like a net. But exhaustion was a physical thing now, pressing down on my shoulders. And underneath the fear, underneath the questions screaming in my head, was something else. The first real sense of safety I'd felt in 3 months. Why? I whispered. Why would you help me? He considered the question, his expression unreadable in the low light. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but certain. Because I can. Not because he was kind, not because he cared, because he could. It should have terrified me. Instead, I heard myself say, okay. His eyebrow lifted fractionally. Okay? I'll stay tonight. The words felt like stepping off a cliff, but I was so tired of falling. But tomorrow we talk. Really talk. About what you want, what this costs, all of it. Agreed. He stood, his height suddenly imposing in the low-ceilinged space. There's a guest room down the hall, second door. Everything you need should be there. We'll talk in the morning. I rose on unsteady legs, still clutching my water glass like an anchor. As I moved toward the hallway he'd indicated, his voice stopped me. Taylor. I turned. He stood silhouetted against the city lights, hands in his pockets, expression inscrutable. You're safe here, he said. Whatever else happens, understand that. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and disappeared down the hallway. The guest room was as pristine and impersonal as the rest of the penthouse. White walls, gray bedding, blackout curtains. A bathroom with toiletries still in their packaging. Everything perfect. Everything temporary. I locked the door, slid down against it until I was sitting on the floor, and finally let myself shake. Sunlight woke me, sharp and insistent through windows I'd forgotten to cover. I jolted upright in the unfamiliar bed, heart racing before memory caught up with panic. The penthouse. The stranger. Marcus in the corridor. Everything came flooding back in a nauseating rush. I'd actually spent the night here. The guest room looked different in daylight, still pristine, still impersonal, but softer somehow. Less like a hotel, more like a very expensive waiting room. I was still wearing yesterday's uniform, wrinkled and stale. My mouth tasted like copper and regret. The penthouse beyond my door was silent. I crept out, bare feet soundless on cool hardwood, and stood in the hallway listening. Nothing. No movement. No voices, No indication anyone else was here. For a wild moment, I wondered if he'd left me alone, if I could just walk out and pretend none of this had happened. Then I saw the coffee. A single white mug sat on the kitchen counter, steam still rising. Next to it, a folded newspaper and a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Shower. Eat. We'll talk when you're ready. The handwriting was precise, controlled, like everything else about him. I moved through the living area slowly, noticing things I'd missed in last night's shock. A silver-framed photo on a side table, him with two other men in suits, all unsmiling. The kind of picture that looked more like documentation than memory. A laptop on the dining table, closed but with a small red light blinking. Security system panel by the door, dark screen showing armed in green letters. And on the bookshelf, tucked between a leather-bound collection and a crystal decanter, the corner of a wall safe, barely visible where a book had been moved. This wasn't just a penthouse, it was a fortress disguised as luxury. I poured myself coffee with shaking hands, then wandered to the windows. 25 stories up, the city spread below like a circuit board. Cars and people reduced to abstractions, everyone living their small, normal lives while I stood trapped in this beautiful cage. The shower in the guest bathroom was rainfall style, the kind I'd only seen in magazines. I stood under scalding water until my skin turned pink, trying to wash away yesterday, trying to think clearly through the fog of exhaustion and fear. When I emerged, I found clothes laid out on the bed. Women's clothes, gray joggers, a soft black t-shirt, clean underwear still in packaging, all exactly my size. How did he know my size? I dressed quickly, unease prickling down my spine, then reached for the door handle. Locked. My stomach dropped. I tried again, jiggling the handle, then pounding once, twice. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and he stood there, still in last night's dress shirt and slacks, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His hair was slightly disheveled, the only imperfection I'd seen in him. I started, trying to leave. His tone was neutral, but his body blocked the doorway. I know. You locked me in. For your safety. That's what kidnappers say. His jaw tightened fractionally. If I wanted to kidnap you, Taylor, I wouldn't have given you a room with a window. He stepped back, gesturing down the hall. Come. Let's have this conversation properly. I followed because I had no other choice, or because part of me wanted to, or because the line between those two things had blurred beyond recognition. He led me past the guest room to another door I hadn't noticed. Inside was something between a bedroom and a studio apartment. Queen bed, small sitting area, walk-in closet, ensuite bathroom. Still minimal, still elegant, but warmer somehow. A cashmere throw draped over a chair. Books on the nightstand. A framed print of the city at sunset. This is yours, he said simply, for as long as you're here. How long will that be? Until you're safe. And who decides when that is? He moved to the window, hands in his pockets, silhouette sharp against the light. I do. The words should have made me run. Instead, I sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion winning over indignation. I can't just disappear. I have a job, bills, a life. You had a life. He turned to face me. Yesterday, that life included a man who doesn't understand the word no. Today, it includes me. Which would you prefer? I'd prefer my freedom. Freedom is an illusion people with enemies can't afford. He crossed to a dresser, opened a drawer, retrieved a smartphone still in its box. This phone is clean, encrypted, untraceable. Use it to call anyone you need to, work, family, friends. Tell them you're taking a leave of absence, family emergency. I can't afford. I'll cover your rent, your bills, whatever you need. My head spun. Why? What do you want from me? He set the phone on the nightstand, then sat in the chair across from me, close enough to talk, far enough to let me breathe. What I want is to understand your situation. Your ex-boyfriend, Marcus. He said the name like it tasted wrong. Tell me about him. Where he lives, where he works, who he knows. I don't know most of that. We broke up 6 months ago. I tried to erase him from my life. But he knows where you work. Obviously. Which means he'll come back. His gaze was steady, assessing. The hotel? You know who owns it? Some corporation? I never paid attention. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or satisfaction. I own it. The hotel, this building, 3 others in the city. Every person who works there answers to me, eventually. The floor tilted. You're someone who doesn't like problems in his establishments. He leaned forward slightly. Your ex-boyfriend is a problem. He caused a scene in my lobby, put hands on my employee, disrupted my business. That makes him my concern. I'm not your employee. I'm contracted through an agency. You work in my building. That makes you mine to protect. The possessive language should have alarmed me. Instead, something warm and terrible uncoiled in my chest. For 6 months, I'd been invisible, unprotected, alone. Now someone was saying, mine, like it meant something, like it meant safety. What happens now? I whispered. Now you stay here. You use that phone. You stay off social media. You don't contact Marcus, don't respond if he reaches out. And you let me handle the situation. Handle it how? His smile was thin and didn't reach his eyes. However necessary. We sat in silence, the unspoken threat hanging between us like smoke. I should have been terrified. I should have demanded to leave, called the police, done something other than sit there feeling the inexorable pull of his certainty. But I was so tired of being afraid. I don't trust you, I said finally. You shouldn't. But I don't trust the world outside either. Then you're smarter than you look. He stood, moved toward the door, then paused at the threshold. Breakfast will be ready in 20 minutes. Take your time. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, phone box in my hands, staring at my reflection in the darkened screen. The girl looking back wore borrowed clothes in a borrowed room in a stranger's fortress, and for the first time in months, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. I should have felt trapped. Instead, I felt something dangerously close to relief. By day 3, I'd memorized the rhythm of the penthouse. He left early, before sunrise, the sound of the door closing so soft I might have imagined it. He returned late, sometimes after midnight, his footsteps careful in the hallway like he was trying not to wake me. In between, I existed in a luxurious limbo, caught between the suite he'd given me and the sprawling common areas that felt too exposed, too much like trespassing. I'd called my supervisor, used the family emergency excuse. She'd been surprisingly understanding, told me to take all the time I needed. I wondered if he'd gotten to her first, smoothed things over with money or influence or whatever currency people like him use to reshape reality. I'd thought about calling friends, but what would I say? I'm hiding in a stranger's penthouse because my ex won't leave me alone. And the stranger might be more dangerous than the ex, but at least he's dangerous in my favor. So I didn't call anyone. I read his books, mostly biographies of men who'd built empires and destroyed competitors. I cooked simple meals in his pristine kitchen, feeling like an intruder every time I opened a cabinet. I stood at the windows watching the city breathe below me, all those normal lives continuing while mine had gone off the rails. And I listened. That was the 4th day, late afternoon, when I heard his voice from the study. A room I'd been avoiding because the door was usually closed and I wasn't sure what boundaries still existed here. The package moved. His voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge to it I hadn't heard before. She's inside. Secure. My blood went cold. She. I pressed closer to the wall outside the study, barely breathing. I don't care what Volkov thinks. A pause. Tell him the situation is under control. No, she doesn't know. She doesn't need to know. My heart hammered against my ribs. I backed away slowly, carefully, but the hardwood creaked under my weight, a single traitorous sound in the silent apartment. The conversation stopped. I fled to my suite, closed the door, leaned against it with my pulse roaring in my ears. The package. Not Taylor. Not the girl from the elevator. The package. Like I was cargo. Like I was inventory. That evening, I confronted him. He was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, preparing what looked like a complicated pasta dish with the same focused precision he applied to everything. He glanced up when I entered, took in whatever expression was on my face, and set down his knife. What did you hear? Not, did you hear something? Or, is everything okay? Just acknowledgement that I'd been listening. Enough! I crossed my arms, trying to look braver than I felt. Who's Volkov? What package? And why am I she instead of Taylor? He wiped his hands on a towel, unhurried. You wouldn't like the answers. Try me. No. The casual dismissal lit something hot in my chest. You don't get to lock me in a tower and keep secrets. If I'm in danger, if there's something beyond Marcus, I have a right to know. You're not in danger. Then why won't you tell me? He moved closer, and I held my ground even though every instinct screamed to back up. He stopped just inside my personal space, close enough that I had to tilt my head to meet his eyes. Because the moment you know, he said quietly, you become complicit. Right now, you're innocent. You're a victim I'm protecting. If I tell you what's happening around you, that changes. You understand? I didn't. Not really. But I understood enough to feel the walls closing in. I can't live like this, I whispered. Safe, but caged. Protected, but powerless. I can't go to work. Can't see friends. Can't even walk outside without permission. This isn't a life. It's just a prettier prison. Something flickered in his expression. Regret, maybe, or recognition. I know. Then let me go. I can't. Can't or won't. He stepped back, creating distance, and returned to his cutting board. Does it matter? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, wearing the same borrowed joggers and t-shirt that had become my uniform. The city glittered below, thousands of lights, thousands of lives, all of them free in ways I wasn't anymore. Somewhere down there, Marcus was sleeping, or plotting, or moving on to some other woman he could manipulate and control. And somewhere else, people whose names I didn't know were making decisions about me. Calling me packages and situations and she, like I was a problem to be managed instead of a person. Sirens wailed in the distance, red and blue lights strobing between buildings. An ambulance, maybe. Or police. Proof that the world kept turning, kept breaking, kept hurting people no matter how high above it you tried to hide. Was I safe here? Or just hidden? I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. The soft click of a door made me turn. He stood in the hallway entrance, barefoot, wearing dark sleep pants and a t-shirt that made him look almost human, almost approachable. His hair was disheveled, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he slept as poorly as I did. He didn't say anything. Just crossed to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler, then did the same with a second glass. He set one on the coffee table in front of the couch, then settled into the chair across from it, the same configuration as our first conversation, maintaining that careful distance. An offering, or maybe an apology. I stayed at the window for another moment, stubborn, then gave in and moved to the couch. The whiskey burned going down, but the warmth that followed was almost comforting. We sat in silence, drinking, not looking at each other. Finally, he spoke. "I'm not a good man, Taylor. I know. I've done things that would horrify you. I believe you. But I don't hurt innocent people, and I don't let innocent people get hurt when I can prevent it." I turned to look at him. His profile was sharp against the city lights, all angles and shadows. "Is that what I am to you? An innocent person you're preventing from getting hurt?" "Among other things." "What other things?" He met my gaze, and something passed between us, something electric and dangerous and entirely unwelcome. "I haven't decided yet." My breath caught. The air felt too thick, too warm. I should have been afraid, should have recognized this for what it was, a predator circling, testing boundaries, seeing how much ground I'd give. But fear wasn't what made my pulse quicken. "I don't like you," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "I know. I don't like what you've done to Marcus. I don't like that you're keeping secrets. I don't like being trapped here." "I know. But you saved me." The admission felt like surrender. "You're the first person in 6 months who actually made me feel safe. And I hate that. I hate that the only person who makes me feel protected is someone who terrifies me." He set his glass down with careful precision. "I don't want to terrify you." "Then what do you want?" The question hung in the air between us, unanswered and maybe unanswerable. After a long moment, he stood. "Get some sleep, Taylor. Tomorrow will be complicated." He left without another word, disappearing down the hallway to wherever he slept in this cold, beautiful fortress. I stayed on the couch, whiskey warming my stomach, staring at the city lights and wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Wondering if I even wanted to get out. The envelope appeared on the breakfast table on day 7, crisp and cream-colored, my name written across it in that same precise handwriting. Not Taylor. Isabella Marie Taylor. My full name, the one only my mother used when I was in trouble, the one that appeared on legal documents and nowhere else. Seeing it there, in his handwriting, felt like an invasion I couldn't name. He sat across from me, coffee untouched, dressed in another immaculate suit, this one charcoal with thin pinstripes that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. His expression was unreadable, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made my stomach clench. "Open it," he said quietly. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside, a driver's license with my photo but a different address. A credit card, black, heavy, with my name embossed in silver. A social security card. A birth certificate. All official looking, all perfect, all wrong, because the address listed was this building, this penthouse, this cage. "What is this?" My voice came out thin. "Your new documentation. Everything you need to exist here safely." He leaned back, fingers steepled. "The address is registered, the credit card is active, the identity is bulletproof. Isabella Taylor, resident of the Apex Tower penthouse. Clean history. No connections to your old life." The room tilted. "You can't just create a person." "I just did." I stared at the cards spread across the table, these strange artifacts of a life I hadn't agreed to. "Why?" "Because I'm offering you a deal." He stood, moved to the windows, silhouette sharp against the morning light. "I will shield you from Marcus, from anyone who wants to hurt you. I will give you safety, security, resources, protection." He turned to face me. "But you must stay where I can monitor you. Be seen with me, publicly." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. "Be seen with you," I repeated slowly. "As what?" "As someone under my protection, my companion." Heat flooded my face, Anger or shame or something more complicated? You want me to be your what? Your girlfriend? Your... my associate, my guest. Whatever label makes you comfortable. His tone remained level, businesslike. This city runs on perception, Taylor. People need to see you with me. Need to understand that touching you means dealing with me. That's the only language men like Marcus understand. I shot to my feet, chair scraping against hardwood. I'm not a trophy. I'm not some object you can parade around to make a point. No. He crossed back to the table, planted his hands on it, leaned forward. You're a woman who came here running from a predator. I am a predator too, Taylor, but I have different rules. The admission hung between us, stark and honest. I won't hurt you, he continued quietly. I won't control who you speak to, or what you wear, or how you spend your time. But I need you visible. I need people to know you're mine to protect. That's the deal. And if I say no? His jaw tightened. Then you walk out that door, and I can't guarantee your safety. Marcus will find you. He'll escalate. And the next time you run, I might not be there. My breath came too fast, too shallow. This is extortion. This is reality. You're giving me no choice. I'm giving you the only choice that keeps you alive. His eyes never left mine. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like me. But you have to decide. Your freedom or your safety. You can't have both. He left me alone after that. Disappeared to wherever he went during the day. Business, he'd said once, without elaboration. I paced my suite like a caged animal, the envelope clutched in my shaking hands. Isabella Taylor, Apex Tower resident. A person who didn't exist yesterday. A person designed to fit into his world. I pulled out my old phone, the one I'd kept despite his warnings, and scrolled through my contacts. Friends I hadn't spoken to in weeks. My supervisor, probably wondering if I was ever coming back. My mother, 3 states away, who I hadn't called because what would I even say? My thumb hovered over Marcus's blocked number. What was he doing right now? Had he tried to find me? Was he watching my apartment, calling my work, asking questions? Or had the Mafia boss's silent warning been enough to make him disappear? I thought about going back, moving to a different city, changing my name on my own terms, starting over somewhere Marcus couldn't find me. But I'd tried that already, in smaller ways. Different apartment, different phone number, different routes to work. And he'd found me anyway. Because men like Marcus didn't give up. They escalated. They waited. They adapted. The sleepless nights crashed back, every creak in my old apartment, every shadow at my window, every time the phone rang with an unknown number. The exhaustion of constant vigilance, of living like prey, of never feeling safe enough to breathe. I'd been so tired. I was still tired. The city lights flickered on as evening fell, transforming the skyline into something magical and false. I stood at my window, forehead pressed to cool glass, watching people 25 stories below, living their normal, complicated, free lives. Freedom. What did that even mean anymore? Freedom to be hunted? Freedom to be afraid? Freedom to wake up at 3 a.m. convinced someone was breaking in? Or was this its own kind of freedom? The freedom from fear, even if it came with different chains? I thought about the Mafia boss's words. I am a predator too, but with different rules. I didn't trust him, couldn't trust him. He was dangerous in ways I was only beginning to understand, wrapped up in a world I wanted no part of. But he'd kept his promises so far. He'd protected me. He hadn't touched me, hadn't demanded anything beyond my presence. He'd given me space, clothes, safety, time to think. More than Marcus had ever given me in 8 months. The thought made something bitter and hot rise in my throat. I found him in the study around midnight, sitting behind a massive desk with papers spread before him, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when I entered, expression carefully neutral, waiting. I held out the envelope. For a moment, he just looked at it. Then he removed his glasses, set them aside, stood. "Taylor, I accept." My voice was steadier than I felt. "Your deal, your protection, whatever this is, I accept." He moved around the desk slowly, stopped a few feet away. "You understand what you're agreeing to?" "No, not really." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "But I understand that I can't go back. I understand that living in fear isn't living at all. And I understand that you're the only thing standing between me and that fear, even if you scare me too. I don't want to scare you. Too late." I met his eyes, saw something flicker there. Regret or satisfaction, or something more complicated. "But I'd rather be scared of you than scared of him. At least with you, I know where I stand." He took the envelope from my hands, fingers brushing mine, the contact brief but electric. "You're making the right choice." Am I? The question came out smaller than intended. Or am I just trading one cage for another? He didn't answer immediately, and I appreciated that. The lack of easy reassurance, the absence of pretty lies. "Maybe both," he said finally. "But this cage has better locks, and I'm the one holding the key." He moved to a drawer, retrieved a small box, returned and opened it. Inside, a delicate necklace, white gold with a single diamond pendant that caught the light and threw it back in sharp, brilliant fragments. "Tomorrow night," he said quietly, "there's a charity gala. Old money, new money, people who matter in this city. You'll come with me. Wear this. Let them see you. Let them see that I belonged to him." The words hung unspoken between us. I took the box with numb fingers, stared at the necklace that probably cost more than I'd earned in a year. It was beautiful, delicate, perfect, a collar disguised as jewelry. "Tomorrow night," I whispered. He nodded once, then stepped back, giving me space to retreat. "Get some rest, Taylor. Tomorrow, everything changes." I left him standing in his study, returned to my suite, set the necklace on my nightstand where it glittered in the darkness like a promise or a threat. I'd made my choice. Now I had to live with it. The dress arrived that afternoon in a garment bag so expensive I was afraid to touch it. Midnight blue silk that pooled like water, with a neckline that dipped low enough to make a statement without crossing into indecent. Strappy heels in silver. A clutch that weighed almost nothing but probably cost a fortune. And the necklace, that diamond pendant catching light like a tiny, cold star. A stylist appeared at 4, a woman named Simone with silver hair and an efficient manner, who didn't ask questions, just worked. She did my makeup subtle but dramatic, dark eyes, nude lips, a face that looked like mine but polished, refined, expensive. My hair fell in loose waves over one shoulder, artfully casual in a way that took 40 minutes to achieve. When she held up the mirror, I barely recognized myself. "Perfect," she murmured, then packed her supplies and left without another word. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my suite, this stranger staring back. The dress moved like liquid when I turned. The necklace sat precisely at my collarbone, a marker of ownership disguised as adornment. I looked like I belonged in his world. The realization made something twist in my chest, pride and shame in equal measure. He knocked at 7 exactly. When I opened the door, he went very still. He wore a tuxedo that fit like it had been built around him, black with satin lapels, crisp white shirt, bow tie that was probably hand-tied. His dark hair was swept back, jaw clean-shaven, and those eyes swept over me with an intensity that made my skin warm. "You look—" He paused, something shifting in his expression. "Perfect." The word felt weighted, not beautiful or stunning, perfect. Like I was exactly what he'd designed. Maybe I was. Ready? His hand extended, palm up, waiting. I placed my hand in his, felt his fingers close around mine. Warm, steady, possessive, and let him lead me out. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't advertise, where reservations required connections and the menu had no prices. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river, tables spaced far enough apart for privacy, but close enough to see and be seen. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. We walked in, and the room noticed. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they faltered. Heads turned with the careful subtlety of people practiced in discretion. Eyes tracked us, tracked him, then slid to me with open curiosity. The maitre d' appeared instantly, bowing slightly. "Mr. Watford, your usual table is ready." So, that was his name. Stephen Watford. He guided me through the restaurant with his hand at the small of my back, not pushing, just there, a constant warm pressure that announced ownership. People stepped aside as we passed. A man in a gray suit nodded deeply, eyes averted. A woman in diamonds stared openly, her gaze sliding from him to me with something like assessment, like I was merchandise being evaluated. Our table was by the window, slightly elevated, visible to the entire room. Strategic. He held my chair, waited until I sat, then settled across from me with fluid grace. A waiter appeared with champagne we hadn't ordered, poured precisely, and vanished. "Everyone's watching," I whispered. "I know." He lifted his glass in a small toast. "That's the point." I took a sip, the bubbles sharp on my tongue, and tried not to look at the faces I could feel staring. "Do you always eat like you're on stage?" "Always." His lips curved slightly. "Power is performance, Taylor. People need to see it, to believe it." "And what are they seeing right now?" His eyes held mine across the table. "That you're with me. That you're under my protection. That anyone who touches you answers to me." The words should have made me angry, should have made me feel like property, like something owned and displayed. Instead, I felt that same dangerous warmth from last night, the hum of safety, of being claimed by something powerful enough to keep me safe. Dinner was surreal. The food was exquisite, courses I couldn't name, presentations that looked like art, flavors that exploded on my tongue. But I barely tasted it. I was too aware of the room, of the eyes, of him across from me watching my every reaction. A man approached midway through the second course, older, silver-haired, expensive suit. He nodded to the Mafia boss with careful respect. "Stephen, I heard you had a guest. Wanted to pay my respects." "Senator." The Mafia boss's tone was cordial, controlled. "This is Isabella. Isabella, Senator Morrison." The senator's eyes landed on me, calculating and cold. "Charming. I wasn't aware you were entertaining." "I'm not." The Mafia boss's hand moved across the table, covered mine with casual possession. "Isabella is under my protection. I trust that will be respected." Something passed between them, an entire conversation in silence and slight changes in posture. "Of course," the senator said finally, smile not reaching his eyes. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." When he left, I pulled my hand back. What was that? A message being received? What message? He took a sip of wine, expression unreadable. "That you're not available. Not for conversation, not for business, not for anything. You're mine." Mine. The word echoed in my head, dangerous and thrilling and wrong. More people approached throughout dinner, some subtle, some bold, all delivering the same careful respect. And with each interaction, I felt the weight of what I'd agreed to, settling heavier on my shoulders. I was no longer just Taylor, room service runner trying to escape her ex. I was Isabella, the woman sitting across from Stephen Watford in the city's most exclusive restaurant, wearing his diamond at her throat. I was leverage, a statement, a piece on a board I didn't understand. The Mafia boss watched me through it all, his gaze never leaving my face for long. Once, when a particularly leering businessman let his eyes linger too long on my neckline, I saw something dangerous flash in the Mafia boss's expression, something that made the man pale and quickly excuse himself. Another time, when I managed a genuine laugh at something our waiter said, I caught a flicker of something else in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or possession. Or something more complicated that I didn't want to name. The drive home was silent. He sat beside me in the back of a town car, the city sliding past in streams of light and shadow. The privacy screen was up, cocooning us in expensive leather and tinted windows. "What did you think?" he asked finally. I turned to look at him, this man who'd reshaped my life in a week. "I think I just became something I don't recognize." "And how does that feel?" I wanted to say terrifying, wanted to say wrong, but the truth was more complicated. "Safe," I whispered. "It feels safe, and I hate that it feels safe." His jaw tightened. He looked like he might say something, but instead just nodded once. When we reached the penthouse, he opened the door for me, helped me out of the car with old-fashioned courtesy that felt at odds with everything else he was. The penthouse felt different when we entered, colder, emptier, like the warmth of the restaurant had revealed how sterile this place really was. I kicked off the heels, leaving them by the door, and moved to the windows. The city spread below, indifferent and glittering. Behind me, I heard a soft sound, a match striking. When I turned, he'd lit a single candle on the coffee table, the flame throwing shadows across his face. He didn't speak, just loosened his bow tie, shed his jacket, and sat in his usual chair. An invitation to stay, or maybe just his presence offered freely. I should have gone to my room, should have put distance between us, preserved whatever boundaries still existed. Instead, I moved to the couch, tucked my feet under me, and watched the candle flicker. We sat like that for what might have been minutes or hours, not talking, not touching, just existing in the same space. Eventually, exhaustion pulled at me. My eyes grew heavy, the day's performance finally catching up. "Go to bed, Taylor," he said softly. I nodded, but didn't move, too tired to stand. The last thing I remembered before sleep claimed me was the city lights dancing on the ceiling, and the distant sound of him moving through the penthouse like a ghost in his own fortress. The first time I saw them, I thought I was being paranoid. It was 3 days after the gala, and I'd ventured down to the hotel lobby, against his advice, but I was going stir-crazy in the penthouse. I'd told myself I was just getting coffee from the lobby cafe, that I had every right to move through the building, that I wasn't actually a prisoner. The two men in dark suits near the elevators didn't look threatening. They looked like every other businessman passing through. Expensive clothes, neutral expressions, phones in hand. But they weren't moving, weren't checking in, weren't waiting for someone, weren't doing anything except being there. And when I walked past, one of them tracked me with his eyes. Not casually, not the way men sometimes looked at women. This was different. Cold, assessing, memorizing. I got my coffee with shaking hands and took the elevator straight back up. The second time was worse. I'd been in the penthouse for nearly 2 weeks, and the walls were closing in. Stephen, I'd started thinking of him by his first name, though I'd never said it aloud, had been gone more than usual. "Business," he'd said vaguely, but there was tension in his shoulders that suggested the business wasn't going well. I'd taken to walking the lower executive floors in the evenings, when most guests were at dinner. It helped me feel less trapped, less like a bird in a gilded cage. I was passing the conference level when I heard voices from an alcove near the stairwell. Hers now. Watford made that clear. So we wait? We watch. He'll slip eventually. They all do. My blood turned to ice. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. The girl's the weak point. She's not trained, not prepared. She doesn't even know what she's part of. Footsteps approached. I fled before they could round the corner, my sneakers silent on carpet, heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. That night, I confronted Stephen. He was in the study, as usual, hunched over his laptop with that focused intensity he brought to everything. When I appeared in the doorway, he looked up, read something in my expression, and went very still. "There are men," I said without preamble, "in the hotel, watching me." He closed the laptop carefully. "Where?" "Lobby yesterday, near the conference rooms tonight. I heard them talking." My voice shook. "They said I'm the weak point, that you'll slip." Something dangerous crossed his face, a flash of fury so pure it made me take a step back. But his voice when he spoke was deadly calm. "What else did they say?" "That I don't know what I'm part of." I wrapped my arms around myself. "They're right. I don't. You won't tell me." He stood, moved around the desk, but stopped before getting too close. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. "They won't touch you." "How do you know?" "Because they're not stupid enough to start a war they can't win." "A war?" The word came out strangled. "What are you talking about? Who are these people?" "Competitors, rivals, people who think proximity to you gives them leverage over me." His eyes burned. "They're wrong." "Stephen!" His name slipped out unbidden, and his gaze snapped to mine at the sound. "I can't keep living like this, watching shadows, hearing whispers, not knowing who wants to hurt me or why. Then stay in the penthouse. That's not living. That's hiding. Hiding keeps you alive." The argument built in my throat, but before I could unleash it, my phone buzzed. The new one, the secure one, the one that only 3 people had the number to. Unknown caller. Stephen's expression darkened. "Don't answer it." But my thumb was already moving, some stupid instinct to confront the threat directly. I put it on speaker. "Hello?" Silence. Then breathing. Slow, deliberate, meant to be heard. "I see you've made some new friends, Taylor." "Marcus." My knees went weak. Stephen moved instantly, taking the phone from my nerveless fingers, ending the call with a single swipe. "How—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "The hotel." His voice was flat, furious. "He's still watching the hotel, probably bribed someone for information, traced you here." He pulled out his own phone, fired off a text with sharp, angry movements. "It's handled." "Handled how?" He didn't answer. I didn't sleep that night. I'd tried, lying in the too-big bed in my suite, staring at the ceiling and listening to every sound the penthouse made. Around midnight, I gave up and wandered to the kitchen for water. Old habits died hard. When I saw the notification on the hotel's internal system, a late-night package delivery request to one of the executive suites, muscle memory kicked in before thought did. I could deliver it. Just one. Feel useful, normal, like I still had a purpose beyond being Stephen's protected asset. I changed into my old uniform, wrinkled now, forgotten in the back of the closet, and took the service elevator down. The package was waiting at the front desk. The night clerk barely glanced at me, just handed it over and went back to his computer. I was halfway across the lobby when I felt it. That same cold attention from before. I looked up, and there he was, a man in a leather jacket, phone raised, unmistakably filming. His eyes locked on mine across the marble expanse, and his smile was slow, predatory, knowing. The package slipped from my hands. I ran. Not toward the service elevator, toward the private one, the one that went directly to the penthouse. My keycard barely worked, hands shaking so badly I had to try twice. The elevator rose with agonizing slowness. Every second I expected the doors to open, expected hands to grab me, expected. The penthouse doors slid open. Stephen stood in the foyer, fully dressed despite the hour, posture alert, like he'd been waiting, like he'd known. I stumbled out, and he caught me, steadied me, then reached past to hit the button. The doors closed with a soft chime, and the locks engaged with a series of heavy clicks. "I'm sorry," I gasped. I needed to feel normal." "I know." He guided me deeper into the penthouse, his hand firm on my back. "I know." There was a man, filming me. I know. He locked the front door, multiple locks I'd never noticed before, then turned to face me. His expression was controlled, but something fierce burned in his eyes, something protective and possessive and terrifying. "I told you," he said quietly. "Once you belong to me, you're part of the game. There are people who want to hurt me, and now the easiest way to do that is through you." "I didn't ask for this." "No, you asked for safety." His hand came up, brushed a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. "This is what safety costs in my world." I should have been angry, should have demanded he let me go, let me take my chances alone. But I'd seen that man's smile, seen the calculation in his eyes, known, with bone-deep certainty, that without Stephen, I wouldn't last a day. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Good." His thumb traced my jaw, a gesture that was half comfort, half claim. "Fear keeps you careful. Careful keeps you alive." "Are you scared?" Something flickered in his expression, vulnerability, quickly masked. "Terrified." The admission shocked me more than anything else. This man, who moved through the world like danger couldn't touch him, who commanded rooms with his presence, who built empires and crushed rivals, he was scared. For me. "What do we do?" I asked. His hand dropped. He stepped back, that impenetrable mask sliding into place. "We play the game better than they do, and we make sure they understand that touching you means war." He moved toward the study, then paused at the door. "Get some sleep, Taylor. Tomorrow, we escalate." I stood alone in the foyer, surrounded by luxury and locks, and wondered which would kill me first, the enemies outside or the safety within. I stopped sleeping on day 17. Not entirely. I'd catch an hour here or there, collapsing into fitful dreams where Marcus's face melted into Stephen's, where men with cameras chased me through endless corridors, where I ran and never reached the exit. I stopped eating on day 18. Food turned to ash in my mouth. Stephen noticed. Of course he noticed, and started leaving things in my room. Fruit, crackers, water bottles with encouraging notes written in that precise handwriting. "You need to eat, please." But I couldn't. My stomach was a knot of anxiety so tight that swallowing felt like choking. By day 19, I couldn't tell if what I felt for Stephen was love or hate or some toxic third thing born from proximity and protection, and the way he looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous at once. I only knew I couldn't breathe anymore. I packed at 3 a.m. when even the city seemed to sleep. One bag, just the essentials, clothes I'd brought with me, my old phone, the little cash I had left. I left the designer dresses hanging in the closet, left the jewelry in its boxes, left everything he'd given me except the dignity I was trying desperately to reclaim. My hands shook as I zipped the bag. This was insane. Where would I even go? But anywhere felt better than this beautiful cage, this slow suffocation disguised as salvation. I crept into the hallway, bag clutched against my chest like armor. The penthouse was dark, except for city light filtering through those massive windows. Silent except for my pulse hammering in my ears. 20 steps to the door. I could do 20 steps, 15, 10, 5. I reached for the handle. Taylor. His voice, soft as smoke, stopped me cold. I didn't turn. Couldn't. Don't. You know you can't. Not angry. Not commanding. Just certain. Inevitable as gravity. Watch me. But I still hadn't moved, hand frozen on the cool metal. Where will you go? Anywhere. Somewhere he can't find me. Somewhere you can't find me. Those places don't exist. His footsteps approached, whisper soft on hardwood. Not anymore. I finally turned. He stood in the hallway entrance wearing sleep pants and nothing else, hair disheveled, those dark eyes catching ambient light. He looked human like this, vulnerable, almost reachable. It made everything worse. I can't do this, I whispered. I can't be your whatever I am, your project, your responsibility, your possession. You're not. Then what am I? The words burst out, sharp with desperation. What am I to you, Stephen? Really? Because I don't know anymore. I don't know if you're saving me or just collecting me. I don't know if I'm grateful or terrified or... My voice cracked. I don't know anything except that I can't breathe here. He moved closer, stopped just outside my reach. You think you'll breathe out there? With Marcus circling? With my enemies watching? You'll last maybe a day before... Before what? Before Marcus finds me? Before your rivals use me? At least then it'll be my choice. At least then I'll have control over how I get destroyed. That's not control. That's suicide. Maybe. I hitched the bag higher. But it's mine. His jaw clenched, that muscle jumping with tension, but his voice remained eerily calm. You don't owe me anything. You're right about that. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose me. He took another step, close enough now that I could see the exhaustion in his face, the fear he was trying to hide. But you ran into me, Taylor. You crashed into my elevator running from your demons, and now they're tangled with mine. That's not my fault. It's not yours either. It's just what is. So I'm stuck? Tears burned my eyes, hot and angry. Forever? Just trapped here because I had the bad luck to get on the wrong elevator? You're protected here. His hand came up slowly, like approaching a frightened animal, and cupped my face. I know it feels like a cage. I know you hate it. But the alternative? The alternative is freedom. The alternative is death. His thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. And I won't let that happen. You don't get to decide that. Yes, he said softly, fiercely. I do. Because the moment you ran into me, the moment you let me bring you here, the moment you signed those papers and wore my diamond and sat across from me in that restaurant, you became mine to protect. That's not negotiable. The possessive language should have made me furious, should have given me the anger I needed to push past him and run. Instead, something in me cracked. I don't belong to you, I said, but the words came out weak, uncertain. Don't you? His other hand came up, framing my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Look at me, and tell me you haven't felt it. This thing between us. Tell me you don't lie awake wondering. Tell me you're not terrified because you're starting to want this, want me, and that's worse than any threat out there. My breath caught. I don't... Liar. The word hung between us, brutal and true. Because he was right. God help me, he was right. Somewhere between the elevator and the gala, between late-night whiskey and morning coffee, between fear and safety and confusion, I'd started feeling something. Something complicated and wrong and undeniable. Not love, Not yet, maybe not ever, but something that made leaving feel like amputation. I hate you, I whispered. I know. I hate what you've done to my life. I know. I hate that I can't leave, that I'm too scared to leave, that I don't even want to leave anymore, and I don't know what that makes me. His forehead dropped to mine, his breath warm against my lips. It makes you human. It makes you smart. It makes you mine. Stop saying that. But I didn't pull away. I can't. His hand slid down to my shoulders, my arms gently prying the bag from my grip. It fell to the floor with a soft thump. I can't let you go, Taylor. Not just because of Marcus, not just because of the threats, because I don't want to. Because somewhere between protecting you and watching you and sitting with you in the dark, I stopped being able to imagine this place without you in it. The admission felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. I looked past him to the windows, to the city stretched out below, all those lights, all those lives, all that dangerous possibility. I could step out that door, could take my chances, could be free and terrified and possibly dead within a week. Or I could stay, could accept this strange, complicated safety, could stop fighting and just be here. The choice was mine. Had always been mine, really, despite everything he'd said about belonging and possession and inevitability. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, felt the weight of the decision settling into my bones. When I opened them, Stephen was watching me with an intensity that should have been frightening. Maybe it was. Maybe fear and safety had become the same thing. I took one step back, not toward the door, toward freedom, toward him. Not surrender, not acceptance, just a choice, my choice. His arms came around me slowly, giving me time to change my mind, to pull away, to run. But I didn't. I let him hold me there in the darkened hallway, my face pressed against his bare chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. I'm still angry, I said against his skin. I know. And scared. Me too. And I don't forgive you for any of this. His arms tightened fractionally. I don't expect you to. We stood like that while the city breathed beyond the windows, while dawn crept closer, while the question of leaving or staying dissolved into something more complicated than either. I wasn't free, but I wasn't trapped either. I was choosing this, on my own terms, in my own time, for my own reasons, however twisted they might be. Take me to bed, I whispered. He went very still. Taylor, not like that. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Just, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to pretend we're not tangled up in this together. Just stay with me, please. Something shifted in his expression, relief and want, and something achingly tender. Okay, he said simply. He led me to my room, to the bed I hadn't slept properly in for days. We lay on top of the covers, still clothed, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. The city lights danced on the ceiling. His hand found mine in the darkness, fingers threading together. And for the first time in 19 days, I slept. The papers appeared on the dining table at sunset on day 21. Not a single envelope this time. A folder. Thick, official, leather-bound with brass corners that caught the dying light. It sat there like a judgment, like a door I could walk through or turn away from. Stephen stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city, giving me space to approach on my own terms. I'd known this was coming, had felt it building since the night I'd tried to leave, since I'd chosen to stay, since I'd fallen asleep with his hand in mine and woken to find him still there, watching the sunrise paint colors across my face. 3 weeks. That's all it had been. 3 weeks since I'd crashed into an elevator and collided with fate disguised as a man in an expensive suit. It felt like a lifetime. Sit, he said quietly, not turning from the window. Please. I moved on legs that felt distant, detached, and sank into the chair. The leather folder was cool under my fingertips. Heavy. Real. He finally turned, crossed to the table, and settled into the chair opposite mine. The same configuration as always, that careful distance that had become intimacy through repetition. Open it, he said. Inside, documents that looked official enough to be terrifying. Identity papers, credit cards, bank account information, a lease agreement for the penthouse, co-signed, medical records, fake, I realized, but flawless, a new social security number. A new birth certificate with a birthday 3 days different from my real one. Isabella Marie Taylor was being erased. In her place, Isabella Marie Cross. Cross? I whispered. My mother's maiden name. It creates a connection without being obvious. If anyone digs, they'll find a distant family relationship, plausible, protective. His voice was measured, clinical, but I heard the tension underneath. Read through it, all of it. Make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. I forced my eyes down, made myself read through the legalese. The undersigned agrees to maintain residence at the specified address. The undersigned will not initiate contact with previously known associates without prior approval. The undersigned acknowledges that protection services require discretion, loyalty, and public visibility as directed. The undersigned will not discuss the nature of this agreement with any third party. On and on, clause after clause, each one a small death of autonomy, a tiny surrender of self. No contact with Marcus, expected. No returning to my old apartment, old job, old life, understood. No negotiating power, no exit clause, no escape hatch written into the fine print. Terrifying. This is forever, I said, not looking up. Isn't it? No. His answer surprised me. I met his eyes. It's for as long as you need it. As long as the threat exists. As long as you choose to stay. But once I sign, I can't just walk away. No, he admitted. Once you sign, you're committed. Legally, publicly, irrevocably. Breaking this contract would destroy the protection, would expose you, would make you vulnerable to everyone who now knows you're connected to me. He leaned forward. So yes, in practical terms, this is forever, or close enough to it. My hands shook as I turned pages. New passport, new driver's license, new everything. The photos were recent. When had he taken them? The addresses were all this building, this penthouse, this beautiful cage. On the final page, a signature line, blank, waiting. Below it, in smaller print. By signing this document, Isabella Marie Taylor legally becomes Isabella Marie Cross and accepts all terms, conditions, and protections outlined herein. A burial and a birth in one stroke of a pen. What happens to her? I asked quietly. The old me, Taylor who worked in the hotel, who lived above the laundromat, who dated Marcus and thought she could have a normal life. She disappears. His voice was gentle but firm. She becomes someone who left the city, moved on, started over somewhere else. People will forget her. Records will show she exists somewhere in the system, just not here, not now. It's safer that way. Safer for who? For you. For both of us. I traced the signature line with one finger, this boundary between past and future. And if I don't sign? If I walk away right now? He was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll give you money, a new phone, help you disappear on your own terms. And I'll hope. His voice caught, almost imperceptibly, "I'll hope you survive what comes next." The honesty of it broke something in me. He wasn't threatening, wasn't manipulating, just stating the brutal mathematics of survival in a world I'd stumbled into unprepared. I looked at him across the table. This man who'd saved me, trapped me, protected me, claimed me. His expression was unreadable, that careful mask he wore so well, but his eyes held something raw. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, but something real. Something that made this feel less like a transaction and more like a vow. "If I sign," I said slowly, "what are you promising me?" "Safety, loyalty, protection from Marcus, from my enemies, from anyone who would hurt you." He paused. "And honesty. I won't lie to you, Taylor. I won't pretend this is something it's not. But I won't let you face this world alone. That's not much of a promise. It's the only one I can keep." The city beyond the windows began its transformation into night, lights winking on one by one, the great machine of life grinding forward. Out there, Taylor existed, simple, scared, hunted. In here, Isabella waited, protected, possessed, permanent. I thought about Marcus, about the men in the lobby, about the phone call, the cameras, the whispers, about 3 weeks of sleeping with one eye open and 21 days of finally feeling safe. I thought about Stephen's hand in mine in the dark, about the way he'd caught me when I fell, about "welcome home" and "you're mine," and all the dangerous promises wrapped in possession. This was insane. Signing away my identity, my autonomy, my past, all of it. Binding myself to a man I barely knew, a world I didn't understand, a future I couldn't predict. But the alternative was returning to a life where I'd never feel safe again. And I was so tired of being afraid. "Give me the pen," I whispered. He produced one from his pocket, heavy, expensive, probably worth more than my old monthly rent. He placed it on the table between us, midway, not pushing. The choice was mine, had to be mine. I picked up the pen. It was warm from his pocket, from his body heat. My hand shook as I positioned it over the signature line. Isabella Marie Cross. A stranger's name. A new woman. Someone who belonged in penthouses and galas and dangerous men's orbits. The pen touched paper. I signed. My handwriting looked foreign, shaky, but it was done. Ink on paper. Legal. Binding. Real. The old me dissolved with each letter. Taylor, who'd been hunted, became Isabella, who was claimed. The transformation was silent, instant, absolute. I set the pen down carefully, afraid if I moved too fast I'd shatter. Stephen was quiet for a long moment, just looking at the signature, at me, at what we'd just made permanent. Then he stood, moved around the table with that fluid grace, and positioned himself behind my chair. His hands settled on my shoulders, warm, steady, possessive. He leaned down, close enough that I felt his breath against my ear. "Welcome home, Isabella." The name sounded foreign and right all at once. I turned my head slightly, catching his profile in my peripheral vision. "Is that what this is? Home?" "It is now." His hands squeezed gently, then released. He moved away, gathering the papers, filing them in the folder with careful precision, making it real, making it legal, making it permanent. I stayed in my chair, staring at the window where my reflection gazed back. This woman who looked like me, but wasn't. Not anymore. Outside, the city pulsed with life. People rushing to dinner, to dates, to their small apartments and normal problems, living their free, complicated, ordinary lives. Inside, mine had changed forever. I'd signed away Taylor, signed away freedom, signed away the past, but I'd signed toward safety, toward protection, toward something dangerous and compelling and entirely unknown. The door had locked behind me. I couldn't go back. Wasn't sure I wanted to. Stephen returned, held out his hand. Come, let's have dinner. You need to eat. I looked at his hand. This man who now legally, publicly, irrevocably owned my protection and my presence. This man I'd chosen. This life I'd accepted. I placed my hand in his, let him pull me to my feet, let him guide me toward whatever came next. The woman who'd run into an elevator 3 weeks ago was gone. Isabella Cross stood in her place, and somewhere between fear and safety, between captivity and protection, between the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming, I stopped running.